So here he goes again, his latest effort to terminate the deal. Successful or no?
Look, I think the Zacco situation for Musk, Christmas came early. I mean, he was going into Delaware in terms of October, I think, in a very weak position legally. And I think, of course, even from a substance perspective, this is significant in terms of Pandora's box, what it could open, not just in the bot issue, but in terms of broader, even on the security claims.
Yeah, but there is a belief, though, that this doesn't really change all that much. And at the end of the day, again, I just always go back to the fact that he had the opportunity to do diligence on the deal. He didn't do it. And now he's looking for any reason possible to cry foul so he can get out of a deal he doesn't want to go through on.
Yeah, and look, the scapegoat issue is a big thing, right? Because he's really between a rock and a hard place. I mean, our view with Musk is ultimately, if he steps into court in October, he's either going to have to buy Twitter at $54.20 in terms of, that ultimately being forced in the courts, or a settlement of $5 to $10 billion potentially out of court. So right now, I believe this is all a game of high-stakes poker that ultimately forces Twitter and Musk back to the negotiation table in September.
Well, that's the thing. There are those who suggest that that's just not going to be the case, right? That the judge is not going to say, okay, you guys just figure it out and settle this. It's like you agreed to the terms, go through on the terms. Why isn't that more plausible?
Yeah, well, I think the Zacco situation has really, I think it's changed the calculus, because it's not just about the bots, it's about some of the security claims. He'll be in front of Senate in mid-September. And I think for Twitter, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I think that's really the issue here, is that they were going, and even in the stock, I mean, you're talking about a stock that was really reflecting that ultimately Musk was going to have to buy Twitter. I do believe now you've seen a change, not just in terms of how the street views it, but in terms of just the broader soap opera playing out.
I mean, if you're Musk, you can't invent new genies, though, right? I mean, you can't, claim like there are these new issues which aren't necessarily issues to come between him and the deal, unless, and I want your take here, too, what if he sues in federal court alleging fraud?
Well, I think, look, there's a lot of variables that this could go down. And I think ultimately Musk, you're starting to see he's now starting to be on the offensive. Ultimately, Twitter had an iron hand in terms of going into courts. But if you look now, and it's reflected in Twitter stock, this has changed the variables. And the Zacco situation is really sort of the silver bullet that I think for the Musk camp really came from a timing perspective. Interesting time.
So your ultimate call is likelihood of a settlement?
Is that ultimately Musk buys Twitter $50
for a lower price,
for $50, and ultimately they don't even step into court in October.
50? That's all. I mean, he pays 50 instead of $54.20. You really think he wants to pay 50? Look, I thought you were going to tell me he pays like 40.
Well, I think right now for Musk, it all goes back to going into court. He still legally is in a weak spot relative to the deal. And the Zacco situation has changed the calculus. But I still believe if he walks into court, he's either buying Twitter $54.20 or ultimately a $5 to $10 billion settlement. That's what's reflected in Twitter stock.
You said October. He's trying to push it to November. Saw that news today, too, right?
Yeah, I believe that judge stays in October in terms of that being the timing. And ultimately, this is a get out the popcorn, because I think there's going to be more twists and turns ahead post-Labor Day.
Better believe that. What about for Tesla, right? You've said, I think you've called this a sideshow, and not in a good way, for Tesla shares, which, by the way, haven't done all that bad of late. So does it really mean anything material there?
Yeah, it was a black eye for Musk. It was an overhang on Tesla stock. But I do believe since some of the leverage in terms of the Tesla stock has changed, you've started to see that overhang removed from Tesla stock. And now the street really focuses on the fundamental story and the China production playing out.